From killing their own family members to castrating foreigners and impaling their enemies. These are the most cruel leaders in history. And if you are a man, you probably wouldn't have liked getting to know Qin Shi Huang. He reigned from 247 to 210 BC. Qin is also called Qin Shi Huangdi, united China in 221 BC and ruled as the first emperor of the Qin dynasty. He was known to order the killing of scholars, whose ideas he disagreed with, and the burning of critical books. During his reign, he ordered the construction of a Great Wall, roughly speaking the prequel to the modern Great Wall of China, and an enormous mausoleum featuring more than 6,000 life-size terracotta soldier figures. Large numbers of conscripts working on the wall died, and those working on the mausoleum were killed to preserve the secrecy of the tomb. Every time he captured people from another country, he castrated them in order to mark them and made them into slaves. But you probably also did not want to meet Caligula, because the way he saw it, he was a living god. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, also known as Caligula. He reigned from 37 to 41. Caligula was quite popular at first because he freed citizens who were unjustly imprisoned and got rid of a stiff sales tax. But then he became ill, and he was never quite the same again. He eliminated political rivals, forcing their parents to watch the execution, and declared himself a living god. According to Roman historian Suetonius, Caligula had sex with his sisters and sold their services to other men, raped and killed people, and made his horse a priest. He was eventually attacked by a group of guardsmen and got stabbed 30 times. But the next leader was quite the opposite of a god. Attila the Hun, who reigned from 434 to 453. After killing his brother, Attila became the leader of the Hunnic Empire, centered in present-day Hungary, and ended up becoming one of the most feared assailants of the Roman Empire. He expanded the Hunnic Empire to present-day Germany, Russia, Ukraine, and the Balkans. He also invaded Gaul with the intention of conquering it, though he was defeated at the Battle of Catalaunian Plains. "There I have passed, the grass will never grow again," he reportedly remarked on his reign, getting him the nickname the Scourge of God. Now, let's give him some love to our female leaders, or should we say, hate. Wu Zetian, who reigned from 690 to 705. Wu went from 14-year-old junior concubine to Empress of China. She ruthlessly eliminated opponents by dismissing, exiling, or executing them, even if they were her own family. The Chinese Empire greatly expanded under her rule, and though she had brutal tactics, her decisive nature and talent for government has been praised by historians. Notably, military leaders who were handpicked by Wu took control of large parts of the Korean peninsula. She was famously known for killing her sister, butchering her elder brothers, murdering the ruler, and poisoning her mother. But that is nothing compared to actually taking out around 11% of the whole world population. Because that is what Genghis Khan did. He reigned from 1206 to 1227. The Khan's father was poisoned to death when the Khan was 9, and he spent time as a slave during his teenage years before he united the Mongol tribes and went on to conquer a huge chunk of Central Asia and China. His style is characterized as brutal, and historians have pointed out that he slaughtered civilians en masse. One of the most notable examples was when he massacred the aristocrats of the Khwarezm Empire, decimating the ruling class with unskilled workers taken to be used as human shields. On estimate, he took out around 40 million people during his reign. Quite a world record, don't you think? Compared to the Great Khan, what Thomas did was merely a small spark. Thomas the Torquemada. He reigned from 1483 to 1498 as Grand Inquisitor. Torquemada was appointed Grand Inquisitor during the Spanish Inquisition. He established tribunals in several cities, put together 28 articles to guide other inquisitors, and authorized torture to extract confessions. He reportedly encouraged King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel to give Spanish Jews the choice between exile or baptism, causing many Jews to leave the country. Historians estimate that Torquemada was responsible for about 2,000 people burning at the stake. Now we got the numbers up again, or should we say up to minarets. Because that is what Timur liked making. He reigned from 1370 to 1405. Timur led military campaigns, through a large chunk of Western Asia, including modern Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, and he founded the Timurid Empire. In present-day Afghanistan, Timur ordered the construction of a tower made out of living men, each stacked on top of another, and cemented together with bricks and mortar. He also ordered a massacre to punish a rebellion, and he had 70,000 heads built up into minarets, basically making pillars and walls filled with skulls. But the next guy liked filling up other. Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, also known as Vlad the Impaler. He reigned from 1448 to 1456. When Vlad III finally became the ruler of the Principality of Wallachia, the region was in a disarray because of the many feuding boyars. According to the stories, Vlad invited his rivals all to a banquet, where he stabbed and impaled them all. Impaling was his favorite method of torture. Though it's difficult to determine whether his story was embellished, it characterized Vlad's rule. He tried to bring stability and order to Wallachia through extremely ruthless methods. Now, don't you think that is on point? What is next is a little less terrible though, because we got Tsar Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible. He reigned as Grand Prince of Moscow from 1533 to 1546. Ivan IV began his rule by reorganizing the central government and limiting the power of the hereditary aristocrats, the princes and the boyars. After the death of his first wife, Ivan began his reign of terror by eliminating top boyar families. He also beat his pregnant daughter-in-law and killed his son in a fit of rage. He earned the nickname Ivan Grozny, also known as Ivan the Formidable, which has been mistranslated to terrible. Now that is what you call a blood bond, right? This queen knew all about that too. Queen Mary I, also known as Bloody Mary. She reigned from 1553 to 1558. The only child of the notorious King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. Mary I became Queen of England in 1553 and soon reinstalled Catholicism after previous rulers championed Protestantism as the main religion and married Philip II of Spain, a Catholic. Over the next few years, hundreds of Protestants were burned at the stake, and for that she earned the nickname Bloody Mary. And this countess right here could have been her sister. Countess Elizabeth Bathory the Exit, also known as the Blood Countess. She ruled from 1592 to 1610. The countess lured young peasant women into her castle, promising them jobs as maids before brutally torturing them to death. According to one account, she tortured and killed as many as 600 young girls, though the actual number is likely to be much lower. Her torture methods included sticking needles in their fingernails, covering girls in honey before unleashing bees on them, biting off chunks of flesh, and, most infamously, bathing in the blood of virgins to stay young and beautiful. And in my eyes, that must have won her the war to claim the blood title in her name. The next one gives maximum terror, because we got Maximilien Robespierre. He reigned from 1789 to 1794. One of the many influential figures involved in the French Revolution, Robespierre became one of the dominant players during the Reign of Terror, a period of extreme violence when enemies of the revolution were guillotined, arguing that this terror was an emanation of virtue. According to historical sources, Robespierre was soon corrupted by power and was executed by the guillotine as well. Now, let's turn a little more to the dark side, right? King Leopold II of Belgium, who reigned from 1865 to 1909. King Leopold II founded the Congo Free State as his own private colony, and went on to make a huge fortune from it by forcing the Congolese into slave labor from ivory and rubber. Millions ended up suffering from starvation. The birth rate dropped as men and women were separated, and tens of thousands were shot and in failed rebellions. Demographers estimate that from 1880 to 1920 the population fell by 50%. He was definitely a runner-up for Genghis Khan, but could not quite beat the record. This forced labor system was later copied by the French, German and Portuguese officials. But not everyone liked forced labor, some just wanted to go for the kill. Like Mehmed Talat Pasha, who reigned from 1930 to 1980. Historians believe that Talat Pasha was the leading figure in the Armenian genocide. As Minister of the Interior, he was reportedly responsible for the deportation and ultimately the deaths of some 600,000 Armenians. He was assassinated in Berlin in 1921 by an Armenian. As an unusual bit of history, Adolf Hitler sent his body back to Istanbul in 1943, hoping to persuade Turkey to join the Axis powers in the Second World War. A neighbor of Hitler had another way of doing things though. Vladimir Lenin, who reigned from 1917 to 1924. In 1917, Lenin led the October Revolution to overturn the provisional government that had overthrown the Tsar. About 3 years of civil war followed, after which the Bolsheviks came out on top and took over the country. During this period of revolution, war and famine, Lenin demonstrated a chilling disregard for the suffering of his own fellow countrymen and mercilessly crushed any opposition. The real terror and killing started when Stalin reigned. More on that later. But first we got another guy who likes red pasta, if you know what I mean. Benito Mussolini, who reigned from 1922 to 1943. After escaping military service, Mussolini founded Italy's fascist party, which was supported among disillusioned war veterans and organized them into violent units called Black Shirts. He began to disintegrate democratic government institutions, and by 1925 he became Il Duce, or the leader of Italy. Surviving multiple assassination attempts, Mussolini once said, "If I advance, follow me. If I retreat, kill me. If I die, avenge me." In 1936, Mussolini formed an alliance with Nazi leader Adolf Hitler, in which he introduced anti-Semitic policies in Italy. In April 1945, already removed from power, Mussolini tried to flee as Allied forces closed in on him, but he was shot and killed by anti-fascists and hung upside down in the Milanese square. Someone who himself turned the whole world upside down was Joseph Stalin, who reigned from 1922 to 1953. Stalin forced quick industrialization and collectivization in the 1930s that coincided with mass starvation, including the Holodomor in Ukraine, the imprisonment of millions of people in the Gulag labor camps, and the Great Purge of the intelligentsia, the government, and the armed forces, accounting for around 20 million kills during his reign of terror. During World War II, Stalin's son Yakov was captured by or surrendered to the German army. The Germans proposed trading Yakov for Field Marshal Paulus, who was captured after the Battle of Stalingrad. But Stalin refused, saying he would never trade a field marshal for a regular soldier. Now, wasn't that brutal? Someone else who was truly brutal, and we could obviously not leave out of this list, is Adolf Hitler, who reigned from 1933 to 1945. By the end of 1941, Hitler's German Third Reich Empire and Axis included almost every country in Europe, plus a large part of North Africa. He also devised a plan to create his ideal master race by eliminating Jews, Slavs, Gypsies, homosexuals, and political opponents by forcefully sending them to concentration camps, where they were tortured and worked to death. According to some reports, the Nazis deliberately killed about 11 million people under Hitler's regime. After learning that Soviet forces were closing in on Berlin, Hitler and his wife killed themselves in a Führer bunker. Someone that learned from the Soviets was Khorlogin Khoibalsan, who reigned from 1939 to 1952. After several meetings with Stalin, Khoibalsan adopted the Soviet leaders' policies and methods and applied them to Mongolia. He created a dictatorial system and suppressed the opposition, and tens of thousands of people were killed. Later in the 1930s, he began to arrest and kill leading workers in the party, government, and various social organizations, in addition to army officers, intellectuals, and other faithful workers, according to a report published in 1968. Another guy who joined in on the 1940 craziness was Francisco Franco, who reigned from 1938 to 1975. With the help of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, General Franco overthrew Spain's democratically elected Second Republic during the 1930s. Under his regime, many Republican figures led the country, and those who stayed were tried by military tribunals. Catholicism was the official, read-only tolerated religion. Catalan and Basque languages were prohibited outside the home, and the regime had a vast secret police network. As Franco got older, however, police controls and censorship began to relax. free market reforms were introduced, and Morocco gained independence. For the next rulers, we head over to the east. Mao Zedong, who reigned from 1949 to 1976. A communist leader, Mao founded the People's Republic of China. Under his leadership, industry was put under state control and farmers were organized into collectives. Any opposition was swiftly suppressed. Mao's supporters point out that he modernized and united China and turned it into a world superpower. However, others point out that his policies led to the deaths of as many as 40 million people through starvation, forced labor, and executions. Interestingly, he has something compared to Qin Shi Huang, the first man on this list. But we are nearing the end of the list, so make sure to subscribe if you didn't yet. Don't make us send Pol Pot after you, because he reigned from 1975 to 1979. Pol Pot and his communist Khmer Rouge movement in Cambodia orchestrated a brutal social engineering that aimed to create an agrarian utopia by relocating people into the countryside. Others were put in special centers where they were tortured and killed. Doctors, teachers, and other professionals were forced to work in the fields to re-educate themselves. Anyone thought to be an intellectual of any sort was killed. The BBC reports, often people were condemned for wearing glasses or knowing a foreign language. Up to 2 million Cambodians were executed or overworked or starved to death in just 4 years. Idi Amin needed double that time to cause his terror. He reigned from 1971 to 1979. Amin overthrew an elected government in Uganda via a military coup and declared himself president. He then ruthlessly ruled for 8 years, during which an estimated 300,000 civilians were massacred. He also kicked out Uganda's Asian population, mostly Indian and Pakistani citizens, and spent large amounts on the military, both of which led to the country's economic decline. And last but not least, we got Agostinho Pinochet, who reigned from 1973 to 1990. Pinochet overthrew Chile's Allende government in 1973 with the help of a US-backed coup. Reports say numerous people disappeared under the regime and as many as 35,000 were tortured. Pinochet died before he could stand trial on accusations of human rights abuse. He brought back free market economic policies, which led to lower inflation and even economic boom in the late 70s. Notably, Chile was one of the best performing economies in Latin America from the mid-80s to the late 90s. Comment which cruel leader we left out and we will feature them and you in our next video. Click the video you see on screen now to learn more about how these leaders tortured people.